Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jacqueline Snyder. I'm a recruiter with the City of Portland. I've been here for 3.5 years. I'm very grateful to have worked with Stephanie Howard, Director of Community Safety and Wellness Recruitment. We are here for the Office of Violence Prevention Town Hall. We're meeting 3 really fantastic candidates. So thank you again to those of you who are online and for those of you who are in person. If you're in person, we do have snacks and drinks. We have a brief agenda today. We'll have a very brief introduction of our recruitment process. We're going to give a little overview of how this forum is going to work. We'll be meeting Jamie Evans Butler, Esther Leva, and Bobby Hamilton for our green finalists for this position. And we also have a few closing remarks. Can everybody hear me now? Online, I'm very sorry. Okay, so we will get started. Please welcome Jamie Evans Butler.
Well, it's great to be here with everyone. It's really, this is really an exciting day for me. I've been really excited about this position. I'm happy to be here in Portland, and I really look forward to taking your questions too. My name is Jamie Evans Butler. I have been working in violence prevention for around 15 years. I started domestically and more recently was doing this work internationally. So my first experience in violence prevention was working with youth in gangs in California, in Northern California, in Salinas. I had the opportunity to work with young people who were involved in the juvenile justice system, had been involved in 2 different gangs, the Norteños and the Sureños. And at that point, I designed a conflict resolution course for them in a school with the County of California, and really taught them principles of nonviolent communication and mediation. And that experience was really my first time engaging in this kind of work, and it sparked real interest in me to continue working. I continued to do it in Harlem, New York, with the Police Athletic League from New York, by the way. And then after that, I made a bit of a shift into international work. I joined USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, and continued working on violence prevention, but overseas, so countries in Africa, in Central America, in South America, and then also more recently in Kosovo. And all of that work was very similar to the kind of work that offices of violence prevention do around the US. It was managing grants, working with the same types of communities, working with young involved in conflict in Central America, in particular, young people in gangs. And it was all about helping them find opportunities to get out of those situations and also working across a really wide range of stakeholders, from police to government to social workers. So I've had this experience and am now looking to continue to work in this field domestically, and I'm very excited about the position. So I just wanted to give a brief background on my experience, and I'll continue. I know we don't have a lot of time too, so I'm going to try to rush through all of this, and then please, if you have questions again, just let me know. Before I get into what is really my vision for this position, I wanted to just pause here for a moment. I think a lot of you are familiar with this graph. To me, it's very significant because it tells a story of the spike in gun violence that happened around 2022, and then the trend downwards that we've seen. And I think what I would just say about that is, in Portland, in other cities like Baltimore and in Washington, D.C., that is for a reason. And I think it's because of this focused deterrence approach with programs like Ceasefire, supported by violence prevention programming. And I really think that that's significant. And I hope, when I get further into my presentation, you'll see that what I'm really trying to say is that I think this work needs to continue in a very similar track, but with maybe some slight adjustments. So just go on. Let's pause for one more second. I also just think it's always really important to look at the operational context, what's happening within a structure that you're working in. And in the city government here, I know there's been a lot of changes, but in particular, in the public safety service area, there's been some really significant changes as well. In particular, in these sorry, you can't see with the box there, but in the community safety division, I know certain programs have moved into different offices. Ceasefire has moved into a different place. And I just wanted to pause here and mention that, because coming into a new position, it's really important to know the organizational structure, but also I think to be successful in this work, coordination is a huge part of it. And I would really take that seriously in terms of working with all of these different bureaus you see on this chart in terms of the prevention work that we would be doing. Okay, so I have broken this up into my 30, 60, 90-day plan. So short-term priorities and then medium-term priorities. So I think, a lot of this is common sense. Like when you come into a new role, into a new position, the first thing you need to do is understand that team, build relationships with that team, understand the management issues. But in this particular work, I really wanted to stress community engagement too, because that's kind of the heart and soul of what OBP does, working closely with communities, understanding the violence prevention dynamics. So in the first 30 days, in the first month, I would really focus on management and community engagement. So, for example, identifying these key management priorities, what are the critical policies, processes, resource gaps that I would need to address coming into this new role? I would also say, because this is gun violence, what are the key emergencies that we have to be aware of, that I would have to be aware of? Has there been a shooting? Is there, a particular dynamic that we're watching and concerned about? And what is the plan to communicate around it? I know communicating to the community is really important, and this is an outward-facing role. So I really want to understand the communication process and policies around an emergency event. Of course, knowing the situation with the budget, I know it's a challenging time right now in terms of overall budget issues, but I would really want to come in and know what is the day-to-day picture with the budget, what is happening in terms of our expenditures on all of our grants and all of our operations, what is our long-term vision, and what's our short-term picture. And I'm sure there are, certain budget tools that the office is using, but I would think about developing something with the team to kind of reflect our budget priorities. And then I would also just really focus on staff development. In a new position, you want to meet your staff, understand what their priorities are, their career goals, their professional development plans, and I would really focus on meeting with staff from the get-go to understand that. And then, as I said, community engagement. I think I would really prioritize all of the ways that this office engages with the community. I know the CPC meetings are really key. Yeah. I know those meetings are really key. in terms of engaging with communities. So I really look forward to diving into those, but I would also look forward to working with the team to thinking about new ways to engage the community. Are there other types of meetings that we can structure? I would look to meet with our street level outreach teams and others. And then I would, like, as I mentioned, I would really dive into developing key partnerships with all of our bureaus in the public service area and beyond that. Let's enter. I don't know if this is. There we go. Moving into kind of the next month, I think I would shift in this phase from the management and community engagement approach to diving into all of the key data that we need to be familiar with. So this would be an opportunity to look at different data sets and really assess some of the key issues around violence prevention and with our programming. So I'm sure that there are assessments ongoing with OPP in terms of things they have planned and new assessments. I would want to know all of those in terms of upcoming problem assessments, but also suggest new ones, potentially looking at our community-based organizations and how they gather data and how we can better use that data to inform our programming. And really to use that data to validate our geographic approach and the groups that we're working with. In this month, in the 60-day period, I would want to meet individually with the actual program managers of the programs within the office and understand what the resource needs are, implementation issues, and all of that to get some much better view on our grants. And then beyond the CPC meetings, I would look to other types of meetings and potentially organize roundtables on focused discussions with our grantees on some of the key community violence issues and how our programs are addressing those issues. And then I would also want to look at the ceasefire model and meet with all of those key stakeholders around that model to understand the potential gaps around ceasefire. And then getting to the end here, in the third month, I would want to really now pivot to potential new ideas and potential piloting new activities within our programming. So the data collection efforts would really inform that. And this is where I would really lean on the program managers and my team to come up with potential new ideas or potential tweaks to some of our activities. So with Safer Portland, with Safe Blocks, with Rose City Self-Defense, for example, with Safer Portland, from the data that we've been looking into, are there potential new partners? Are there new private sector partners we could work with on new workforce development activities for young people? With Safe Blocks, what is the data showing us in terms of the geographic location of those activities? Are there neighborhoods that we should go back into and do more community improvement activities? Are there new areas that data is showing are vulnerable and we should have more of an emphasis? And with Rose City Self-Defense, what are community members telling us in terms of new trainings that they need? So I think these kinds of initiatives would, again, really rely on the data we're collecting, the conversations we're having with community members and the team. And then any of the new data on violence prevention issues, any new activities that we're proposing, I would want to socialize that with the community and with our colleagues in some of these community forums. And then with the ceasefire program, depending on how we feel as an office about it in terms of its success and potential gaps, I think it would be really helpful to look at other models in places like Baltimore, in places like Washington, to see what we can learn in terms of best practices from those models. And then I would want to just circle back to the original management issues that I highlighted at the beginning in terms of I would want to make sure that I had approved professional development plans for all of the staff and had them on a really good track in terms of their objectives for the year. And if we did move forward on a budget tool of some sort, I would want to have that finalized and potentially present that in a forum like this. So that is almost the end. I just wanted to wrap it up in terms of what success looks like for me. Of course, continuing to address violence prevention issues in Portland, continuing to see that trend go down, building a really effective and accountable and positive work environment within the OVP team, continuing to focus on expanding community engagement, making sure that everything we do is driven by data, and really focusing on deep collaboration with our core partners and beyond, looking to, partnerships with the county, looking to partnerships, further than within the public safety service area. And then also being a leader that is responsible, that is accountable and responsive. I think, I would want to create a culture where my colleagues and my staff feel like they can come to me and tell me what I can do better as a leader, and feel free to give me feedback on how I can always improve. And I feel like that's always how I worked in a good approach for leading any kind of team. So I'll stop there and just say thank you so much, everyone, and I'll take your questions.
Thank you so much for that. Go ahead and say, I'll hand it over to Stephanie Howard for the facilitating question and answer.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So I only have one microphone, so I'm gonna take a question, then I'm gonna repeat it for the folks on the meeting. And I already saw one hand. Is Kimberly?
Yes. I can talk from the diagram. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions that are all related to each other. My first question for you is, can you tell us with what frequency have you been to the scene of a homicide? And how have you served families in trauma? And then additionally, what relationship do you have with law enforcement and the whole justice system?
So I'll repeat that question for our online folks. It's a three-parter. What frequency have you responded to the scene of a homicide? How did you engage with families in that circumstance? I think is just the second question. And then I'm sorry, really one more time.
And then what is your relationship with law enforcement and the justice system as a whole?
And what is your relationship with law enforcement and the justice system as a whole? I feel like I'm just a bottleneck, so I might just want to see you.
Thank you for the question. So I do have experience responding to homicides and responding broader than that to instances of violence, gun violence, and conflict. My last assignment overseas was in Kosovo, a country that went through a war in the 90s and still is. They're in peacetime now, but they still have a lot of tensions between different groups that live in that country, different ethnic groups. So in 2023, there was a paramilitary attack in a community that was a mixed ethnic group community. And these paramilitary forces rolled in with heavy weaponry, and they opened fire on the community. And I should say, this is a community where we had development projects. We were working with that community, so we knew the people on the staff working and implementing that project. We knew the community members because we would visit that area frequently. And it's a small country too, so you kind of know everybody. And when those paramilitary forces came into that setting, they opened fire, and a police officer responded. And this would be like a police officer responding to the army, so completely overpowered, and was murdered. And it was our responsibility to then continue working with that community and ensuring that everybody who lived in that community was okay after that event, including the families, the programs that we managed. And it was very, very difficult time. The community was very scared that there would be more violence, and they were mourning. One community was mourning the death of a police officer, and the other community was mourning for the paramilitaries because they had lost people as well. And so there were those divisions that still existed, and we had to make sure, first that everybody was okay, that people were accounted for in terms of everybody that we knew who lived in that neighborhood. And then we had to also try to lower the temperature because people were very angry and we were afraid there could be reprisals and more shooting and more violence. So we worked really closely um, with our activity, with our project there, but by doing that, we also had real engagement with families and the community members because our project was working with those community members. So when the fighting was over, you know, I was in that community with my colleagues and with my team to show support for that community and to meet with them, just to listen to their fears and their concerns about the whole event. But I think, you know, the way we responded in the immediate term was to really kind of go down a checklist and to make sure, you know, is everybody that we know accounted for? Is there any more risk of violence? When can we continue to do this peace building work in this community where we safe? And then what do we need to do now to make everybody feel safe again because of this event that's just happening? I don't know, does that answer your question?
I'm just to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the correlation between what you experience and what we have here in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably have to Google on that a little bit.
I can give you one more example just quickly. So when I was working with gangs in California, I was in a classroom setting with teenagers from two opposing gangs, from Norteños and Sureños, and the classroom itself was on the prison grounds because they had basically built a makeshift, the county had built a classroom there and students who had gone through prison and on parole had to show up to that classroom to take classes as part of their parole. And that's where I was working with them. And a lot of those students had experienced violence in their communities. And there was one particular student who had been shot multiple times and was young, was probably around 15 years old. And I, you know, he was someone that I had a very difficult time just engaging in the classroom because he was going through some trauma. And I had to work with the county and with you know, the probation officers to really understand his case and to understand the background and what had happened with him and to really get him to engage in the classroom and to be present because he had gone through something like that. So yeah, that's different. That was not being at the scene of the crime, but that was that was my first opportunity to see firsthand like how people who go through, a person who goes through an event like that is really impacted and how much attention and sort of care they need because of those kinds of events.
So I got a question because what I want to know is how willing are you to listen to those that do the work, right? Because you mentioned like looking at Baltimore and all that, and the understanding that has to be done here in Portland is that we're not Baltimore and we're not Denver. So like nothing is truly built for how our city is built or how our city dynamics is in the streets, the understanding of it all. So there's a lot of people who come from here to do different lanes in this work. And the collaboration is all over the place because the people who have the power to listen to those who do the work, they have a structure, so they're not on the streets. They just like, this is the system that we're creating and this is how it's going to be done. So how willing are you to listen to the organizations that OVP has funded, like the people who really doing the work? That's no.
Yeah. 100%. Like I think that would be, that would be my main focus and my main priority from the very beginning. Basically listening and learning and hearing firsthand from community organizations, from community members, from victims, from as many people as I can meet with to understand the best kinds of approaches to take and the specific communities and neighborhoods where this is happening and how we can be most impactful. I mean, that would be priority number one, listening. And I think that's the only way to be successful in this, coming into this kind of role, because you have to be open to hearing exactly what the situation is on the ground. Otherwise, you're going to come up with approaches that don't make sense for that conference.
I think maybe if you, before the next question's asked, that the questioner could maybe just introduce yourself or say your name so that, that would be helpful for our online folks.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Garnett, and I have a question for you regarding, well, how can I ask this? So do you believe in the HR methodology of having a friend at work? That's one part of the question. The second question is, how do you see, relationships when it comes to work versus, the people outside external from the department? What does that look like for you?
You want to explain the first part, the HR methodology part?
Yeah, well, you have a friend at work. Have you heard of that before? Do you have a friend at work, that's,
Maybe not the way that you're, like, just a friend at work, or is there a particular meaning behind it?
so Myers-Briggs, they talk about, oh, do you feel like you have a friend at work? And they ask that question, and then there's a lot of corporations here, government agencies that, say, hey, we want to support that our team, someone that we're working with knows that they have a friend at work, we can trust.
Yeah.
Someone they didn't talk to at work.
Yes.
Where they feel that they have their best interest in mind.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I do. And the second part of your question again?
And the second question is for external. So everyone that's not a part of the Bureau, not a part of Office of Violence Prevention, what does that relationship look like? How do you intend those relationships to look like?
So with community members,
Not as people like Marvin was saying,
yeah.
like people like that, people that are awarded grants.
Yes.
Contractors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first part, 100%. Like I think everybody needs someone at work that can support them and that they can talk to, about any kind of issues they're having, whether that be, with their supervisor or challenges in their workload or anything. I mean, I've worked on so many different types of teams, in different countries and in different contexts, and I've seen that yes, like teams are going to be most effective when people feel supported, not just by leadership, but by a friend in a different office that they can go and talk to. So that to me is yes, that's critical. And then in terms of how I see my relationship with the partners I've worked with and some of the grantees, is that your question? Going back to what you were saying, I mean, I think we have, in this kind of position, you have to be really aware of what your partners are telling you, what they're telling you in terms of what's happening in their communities, what they're telling you in terms of things that they're trying that aren't working, resources they need. I think, if that kind of communication is not really open-ended as well, and your partners don't feel supported, that you're going to have trouble being successful too. So I would really want to explore, all of the different ways that we can really have those kinds of relationships with partners that are open and effective, and going beyond some of the processes that are already established to do that, to try and understand the frequency of the amount of meetings that people would want to have and when people would want to get together over certain issues, and how, I could be most effective in communicating with our partners. Yeah, that would be a huge part of my approach.
How you doing, Lionel Irving? Well, thank you for applying. I appreciate that. I got two questions for you. One, what's next for you? Do you have any political aspirations? And the second part is, how do you see the self-care for the service providers? A lot of times when you sit in the office, you got a lot of ground floor workers doing the work, And funds already, not meeting the challenge already, so you see a lot of ground, CEOs on the ground for a lot of work, but it's not the real emphasis on their self-care and how the organization's kind of, handled. So how do you see that part of the work? When you got organizations that might not even be funded by OVP, because traditionally OVP was a place where you had to be funded to come into the office and get help.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like?
Thanks for the question. So the first part, in terms of what's next for me, I do not have any political aspirations. I'm like I said at the beginning, this is the work that I'm passionate about. So I'm really hoping to continue working in this field of violence prevention and peace building and conflict resolution. And then in terms of support for service providers, I have worked with lots of different small organizations doing really specific work in communities all over the world. And a lot of the times I've seen that a lot of those organizations do need a lot of support in terms of training, in terms of opportunities for them to become better at applying for future grants, opportunities for them to learn new skills and move into different areas. So I would be really interested in learning about how OVP approaches that, because my perspective on that is that it's really important to work with your partners and provide them opportunities, and really work with them more on not just the program itself, but getting to know the staff of each of those activities and what their professional development needs are. I think that's a really interesting question. And yeah, I'd be very supportive of that.
Jacqueline, can I do a time check? Just want to make sure.
I think I have time for one more question.
Okay, I'm gonna, got some online questions too, so I want to make sure we hold some space for those. One of the online questions that we've received is, do you have experience working in an educational setting, and any experience with de-escalation work?
Yes, I do. I think the best example of that is the one that I talked about at the beginning, working with young gang members in California in the conflict resolution course that I taught. That was an opportunity to work with that population. Oh, sorry, was that the question? Working with.
Do you have experience working in an educational setting?
Yes,
and any
yes.
experience with de-escalation?
So that was an education setting. It was in a classroom, and these were young kids who were reporting to that classroom as part of their role, and I was teaching them a course that I designed. In terms of de-escalation, the entire focus of the course was teaching them ways to recognize and talk to each other in a way that was nonviolent. Because when I first started working with them, they wouldn't even talk to me. The room was literally divided. The Norteño members here, the Serrano members over here, and we created a course that was kind of like a simulation exercise where they learned about the history of the conflict in Colombia, and by doing that, they took on different roles in that story. Like some people were the government of Colombia, some people were members of the media, some people were rebel groups, and they all had to learn the stories and histories of all those different actors, and then learn how to make their arguments and talk to each other. And prior to that, I don't think they were even able to have discussions. So by the end of it, they were able to work in a way where they were having conversations and having very productive classroom sessions and not getting into fights and not actually having conflict with each other. So I think that whole methodology was a way of sort of reducing the tension between two groups.
Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Okay. So this is the survey QR code for JB. You're able to capture that on your screen or your phones, and for those of you who are in person and online. And you'll just get a few minutes to complete this. It's a very brief survey. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much for filling out the survey. I'd like to introduce our next candidate. She is joining us virtually. Her name is Esther Leva. So thank you so much for joining us, Esther. I will go ahead and have you take it away.
Perfect. Okay, I'm ready to start. I just want to confirm that you can see the slides.
Yes, we can see the slides. Your visual disappeared, so we were trying to bring you back up onto our screen. But I think we're good to go now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good evening, council members and residents of Portland. I'm honored to present my vision for the Office of Violence Prevention's next chapter. My name is Esther Leva. I bring 25 years of experience in violence prevention, governance, and community development. I have worked in over 23 countries, some of which were on the top 10 murder capitals of the world, including my own place of birth, Honduras, where my own hometown experienced over 25 murders per day. This is exactly why I chose to become a violence prevention expert. I have personally experienced the sense of insecurity, the loss of loved ones, and the despair as a taxpayer. My biggest achievement was reducing 65% of homicides perpetrated by youth against youth in these countries, and very proudly in my own. And I'm excited to contribute towards the public safety and well-being of Portland and its residents. Portland has achieved remarkable success. We're ranked 4th nationally in violence prevention infrastructure and lead the nation with a 51% reduction in homicides. This didn't happen by accident. It happened through strategic partnerships, evidence-based practices, and community trust. The Violence Prevention Index, where Portland ranks 4th, uses what communities and practitioners know work to reduce gun violence and crime in the United States. Portland was assessed on 35 criteria across these categories, and you can see here how that success stems from those proven strategies. Portland ceasefires focused deterrence model, community violence interrupters with lived experience at POIC, and targeted investments in Cully, Hazelwood, Elliott, and Powerhurst Gilbert neighborhoods. However, as federal dollars expire, programs that reduce gun violence among Black and Brown victims will be cut back by 38%. My plan addresses this head on. Today, I would like to present to you my 30, 60, 90-day plan, which builds on this momentum while also addressing critical sustainability and equity challenges. Let me share how I envision moving Portland from good to great. My first priority is learning, building a foundation. Portland is already moving the needle in the right direction. I would love to understand how that has been achieved. My experience tells me that to learn, one must listen deeply, and that happens when we listen to the people that are closest to the problem. I plan to walk the neighborhoods and meet with the community, shadow the violence interrupters to understand the street level work. I'll meet with survivors of gun violence, and I'll attend community peace collaborative meetings. I will meet with the different team members engaged in public safety, review the mechanisms that exist, grants and contracts. I also want to focus on how rigorous assessment is done, which is a huge part of understanding if things are working well and how they can be improved further. As a team, we also need to be able to identify exactly where federal funding loss will hit the hardest. The results of this learning will inform a complete stakeholder map, including where there might be partnership gaps, a 3-year financial projection that ensures sustainability, and a list of immediate opportunities because Portland residents deserve immediate action. Day 31 and through 60 are about strategizing, focusing on building sustainable infrastructure. This forces us to face a financial reality. We cannot rely on federal grants. The OVP will launch a diversified funding strategy, seeking large donors and corporate foundations committed to racial equity. This will help us build an ironclad case for city budget using return on investment data. Every dollar invested in violence prevention saves $5 in emergency services. Our programs will implement a shared metrics dashboard so that every partner, from police to POIC, can track real-time outcomes. The result of this work will be an expansion of our partnerships. For funding purposes, of course, yes, but also to develop public safety strategies that leverage school-based prevention, healthcare systems for trauma response, and housing options to address the root causes. If violence is a public health issue it requires a public health ecosystem. We'll aim to improve our VPI score from 75 to 85 by enhancing firearm regulation coordination and expanding employment partnerships, two areas where Portland scored the lowest. Days 61 through 90 are about delivering results and communicating them transparently to the community. Here we focus on the next 6 months as we prepare to launch visible initiatives. For example, a summer safety campaign, coordinating with Parks and Recreations, expanding safe blocks to 2 additional neighborhoods. Community engagement will also intensify. I'll hold quarterly community peace collaboratives, listening sessions in each priority neighborhood, and faith leader roundtables. My intention is for these engagements to become genuine co-creation sessions. And communications matter. People need to know what's working. We'll publish quarterly impact reports with real stories of lived change and celebrate our community heroes doing this work. By day 90, our team will be unified and energized. We'll have submitted 3 or more major funding applications. Youth programs will be serving approximately 20% more participants. And most importantly, community members will feel the difference in responsiveness and partnerships. Equity is not a program add-on. It is a guiding principle for how I have learned to do this work. In my experience, focusing on equity is investing in community-led solutions, culturally specific programs, and services that are informed by evidence and people, and in this case, survivors of violence. Every initiative in my 90-day plan asks, does this center on those that are most impacted? Are we building power back into Black and Brown, immigrant, and other communities? Are we paying community experts what they're worth? And accountability means transparency. Every quarter, I will report publicly on results for both community safety and organizational health. With regards to community safety, we'll be tracking shooting incidents, retaliation cycles, community perceptions of safety through surveys, and youth engagement numbers. As far as organizational health, we'll also track partner satisfaction and budget progress. But here's what matters most. I'll report honestly. When something isn't working, we'll say so and explain what we're changing. That's how we build trust. The Violence Prevention Index taught us that infrastructure matters as much as outcomes. We need both. While the number 4 spot on the national ranking of this Violence Prevention Index that I've mentioned signals that Portland is doing things right and where we could improve, what matters most is that 51% fewer families are grieving gun violence deaths. That East Portland parents feel safer sending their kids to school, that our violence interrupters are preventing retaliations before they happen, and yet we find ourselves at a critical moment. Federal dollars that funded this success are ending. We cannot and we will not let our community down after showing what's possible. The 30, 60, 90-day plan I just presented to you ensures sustainability. The first 30 days, I'm listening to you, to the community partners, to the young people in our programs. The following 60 days are building financial sustainability, and deepening partnerships across sectors. And then the final 90 days, delivering visible results that you can see in your neighborhoods. This work belongs to Portland, to the violence interrupters at POIC walking these streets, to the mothers who lost their children yet keep on fighting, to faith leaders who open their doors, and to the young people who keep choosing peace. My job is to support your work, secure the resources you need, and make sure that OVP is a true partner, not a barrier. Portland showed the country that community-led violence prevention works. My challenge to you is let's show ourselves that we can accomplish when we fully invest in our people, because I know that will be my challenge. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Esther. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions. Since we have our candidate virtual, I'll need to bring the microphone over to whoever has a question. So just bear with me as I shuffle around the room. So any questions? Okay. Who was it on this side? Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Ray and I'm with Love is Stronger. My question is, what is the plan to develop OVP into a nonprofit enterprise?
I'm sorry, that was a little difficult to understand. I got the first part.
Sorry, my question was, what is the development around OVP into making it a nonprofit enterprise?
To make it OVP a nonprofit is, I apologize, there's a lot of feedback with the microphone.
The question is about making it a nonprofit enterprise. Perhaps Stephanie can.
Yeah, I meant to jump in just to say, I mean, as a government entity, it's not going to be a nonprofit. It will fund nonprofits, but there's no plan as a city office to make it a nonprofit. That helps, I hope. Okay. I know there'll be other questions, but while people are thinking about it, I have a couple of online questions that maybe I can ask. Violence prevention is often about proving that something didn't happen. If homicide rates in Portland stay flat for 2 years while you're working here, how do you prove to skeptics that your program should continue to be funded?
That is a great question. I would hope that homicides continue on the decline. If a flat line were to occur, this is one of the challenges of being able to look at the metrics and shared metrics across public safety actors. For example, this is not just about homicides, it's about gun-related incidents, it's about gang-related incidents, it's about assault with a deadly weapon. There are many ways to measure progress. And another, on the positive side of that, measuring progress means less calls to 911, residents feel safe walking their streets, businesses are encouraged to expand their business models because safety is not a concern. Investment in the community would be another measure. There are multiple ways of measuring progress around public safety that do not entirely focus on homicides. Of course, as a violence prevention practitioner, homicides are an undeniable fact. There is a victim, there are families around that victim, and there is a perpetrator or more, and there are families around those perpetrators. So oftentimes it's often highlighted as the main measure because of those unequivocal facts of a homicide incident.
How you doing online, Irving? And my question is, first, are you in Portland or are you just couldn't make it? Are you local? Is she,
And I
are
apologize.
you from Oregon? Are you from Portland, Oregon?
No, I am not, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So my question is, what's next for you after this position? And then why did you decide to sign up to come out to Oregon?
So, in my experience, in my former positions, I've done a lot of international work, and one of the challenges of doing international work is that one, for lack of a better word, lands in a place, does the work, and then leaves. I now reside in the U.S. I'm currently a resident of North Carolina, and my family and I are seeking our next big opportunity. To be able to call Portland home, this is one of the ways where I feel I could find my ground. I could work remotely, but I'm choosing to find places where I live and I work and I improve the quality of life using the skills and the experience that I bring to the table. I've done violence prevention for a long time, over almost 20 years now. I've done this work in places that have far less resources, where the community is less cohesive, where partnerships don't exist, and where hope is perhaps the most precious resource that people are searching for. I feel that with the way that Portland has demonstrated that violence prevention work, bringing in evidence-based practices, working with the community, and being able to showcase how things are done well, my addition to the OVP would perhaps be a breath of energy, an injection of energy, where I could bring in ideas and lived experience from other places, and certainly speak to the community, to the partners, to the people within the city office, as someone who has done this work for 15 years and knows how hard it is, but also with the lived experience I bring to the table. That's why I applied to this job, and I'm here tonight with you.
Good evening. Kimberly Dixon. It's unfortunate that you're not here for a position as critical as it is in this city, my city. And I would wonder if you could answer, how do you plan to care for community? Because I want to call here. The folks that you see represented here in the room are just a fraction of the folks who care about this position that you have applied to, and what this work is, and how we solve and resolve violence in our community. So my curiosity is, how will you care for this community? How will you be faced forward? I heard you say that you were going to walk neighborhoods. I'm having a hard time seeing that because I don't see you here in person.
I appreciate your candor, and I can perceive the emotion behind your question, and I share it. I'll be very honest with you. I am not in the room strictly out of logistical reasons. I am currently conducting some consulting work, and it just didn't work out. And that's the reality. I can't be anything but forthcoming of that circumstance. How I would care for communities is the same way I would care for my own community. Because I aspire to become a resident in the place of my work, that is one element of my commitment. It is a coast-to-coast move, family included, because of this position. That's the level of my commitment. As far as what I alluded to in my 30, 60, 90-day plan of walking the streets, to me, that is the most important element. When I say that my experience has taught me that to do a work of this nature well is to sit and listen deeply to the people that are closest to it, is because I've seen that not only provide the knowledge, build the trust, establish the connection, but also provides incredible learning. I am not a violence prevention practitioner that sits behind a desk and reads reports. For me, one of the most important aspects is to keep a direct tie to the communities, to the partners, and to the other members of the public safety ecosystem. Talking to the police, talking to the city council is just as important as talking to the residents, talking to the mothers, talking to the faith leaders, talking to the youth, and talking to the people that are closest to the violence, the perpetrators. I say perpetrators with a sentiment, mixed feelings is the right word I'm looking for, because those are people that could have been reached, could have been diverted, and something along the way occurred for them to choose something other than peace. And that in and of itself, that conversation is valuable and provides deep insight. So I've done this work in many communities, oftentimes in communities where police and city council representatives are not welcome. I've had to sneak into some communities to do this work. I don't envision that being the case in Portland, and I find that exciting. I actually look forward to working in a place that is embracing the violence prevention strategies that I have fought so hard in other places to put forth, to convince people. It is my impression that I wouldn't have to do that convincing in Portland. That said, I am acutely aware that I would have a long way to build trust and establish those partnerships at many different levels.
John Walker here. Just wanted to know, what's the frequency that you have shown up to a homicide scene?
Unfortunately, too many, sir. So in places where I've worked, homicide scenes have been largely unattended by the people that are charged with protecting the scene, gathering the evidence. I've also seen families hurting because they're waiting for somebody to show up to a homicide scene and want to take their loved one away. I've also accompanied victims and deceased from the homicide scenes to the morgue. And it's hard work. But I would say that that is a learning opportunity, that is a way of building trust, and that is a way of finding where the gaps may be, where the weaknesses may lie, where there are communication, sometimes as simple as communication gaps. And the frequency of that is dictated by how effective the process is. And I have yet to meet with many of the partners in Portland to be able to determine whether showing up to a homicide scene is part of this work. But to be perfectly frank, that's part of listening deeply. That's part of building partnerships. That's part of understanding how things are done and how well they're done and where improvements or learning may be had.
We have time for one more question.
Hello, Asia Savage. I wanted to know, because you talked about your time frame with relationship building and walking through neighborhoods, and being that Portland's a very big place. Neighborhoods are severely gentrified. Do you do you in a nutshell honestly think that you are going to be able to relationship build with not only partners, but learn your new role and learn kind of like where you fit in the community in that amount of time, being that this position is a public facing position?
The short answer to that is no, not within the 90 days. That is a longer term. But the first 90 days, first and foremost, are critical for presenting a new face to the community and establishing those partners. It's intentionally showing up and representing the new role I'm aspiring for. And it is foundational. I by no means want to convey that 90 days is enough. No, this is how I propose to fast track my onboarding to the Office of Violence Prevention and present myself as quickly as possible with intention and purpose and with clear goals in mind to the communities that need it the most.
We're actually going to make time for one more question.
Hi again, Joy Vance. Just going back to the first couple of questions that people that had asked me. I'm sorry, what was your name? Kim. Back to her question. I'm just a little confused because you said perpetrating. So with you not being here, what are you actively doing for our Portland community? Because if you haven't made the outreach for the people that are sitting in this room by being here today, it kind of seems like false hope. That seems like false for me at least, because the people that we do have in our community are showing up and, they're actively working. So I'm just, I'm listening to what you're saying and I hear what you have going on. Also with you being in North Carolina, we are on a whole other coast, meaning the West Coast in Oregon. And it's not just gonna be like, just Portland, but outside of Portland as well. But our mainstream city right now is Portland, and the gun violence that is going on and the pain and the hurt that's going on. So I just want to know kind of deeply, because you are talking a lot and, everyone can talk. A lot of people are going to talk to us today. We're going to hear talking all the time. Well, what are you really trying to do? Because with you not being here, kind of already gives us false hope. Can't talk to you in person and we're talking to you over screen. So I would just like to hear a little bit more what you have to say about that.
Thank you. Again, I sincerely appreciate the candor, and I can't help that I am not there in person. I applied to this job and was put forth this opportunity to present and was presented with the option of doing it virtually, and I opted for that. That was a choice. That said, I have been part of this. I applied and have continued to be part of this process because I am committed that I can do the work, that I have the experience, that I have something to contribute. And not being there is not meant to be a sign of disrespect. It was a choice I made because of my own personal logistics. I can't apologize for that fact. Having said all of that, I think that the only thing I can convey at this point is I would not be entertaining the idea of presenting my plan, submitting my thoughts to you all if I didn't firmly believe that I could serve the city of Portland, become a full-time resident of Portland, and help to improve it. That is my response to that. And again, I appreciate your candor.
Thank you so much, Esther. We really appreciate your presentation and for answering all these questions and for your time going through this process. So thank you so much for making the time to be here virtually and meet with us. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen to bring up a QR code to gather people's Sorry, just one second. Right, there we go. So we'll just go ahead and take a few minutes. We did go over a little bit on time, so the questions and answer portion, so we'll just give 2 minutes if we can. Bring it back to QR code.
Yep. Sorry, just getting it available for the people online.
I think that's my extension.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this, what do you think? Is it the conference?
It should be, yeah.
So I'm gonna stop sharing. Presentation. Point.
Something to set that on, or what? We just need something to set that on.
All right, thank you, everybody. We did our little switch over. It's now we are ready to welcome Bobby Hampton. So thank you, Bobby, for being here.
I'll work through this, and again, if we have issues, I also do have hard copies, if that makes more sense. But the reason why I was asking for this setup is I have my slide deck, but I also have my notes within there too, so that I'm not reading strictly off of the slide deck, right? Because if that was the case, I just would have just give it to you all and you can read it for yourself. I don't like to do that myself. So if that's okay, and if people would prefer to have a hard copy, it is black and white. I don't have a problem with that. My notes are included in those hard copies too, but, if we have more issues, I can only share one of those, right? So you can see my notes, or what I would say, or you can see what the actual presentation is. Which is why hopefully we can get this piece of it squared in. Please let me know if you're having issues up here, because again, my view does look a little different because it does have my notes connected to it. But for getting us started, and let me know, can everybody hear me in the back? Oh, thank you. So hello everyone, and I appreciate everybody for being here both virtually and in person. I'm excited to share my presentation with everyone. My name is Bobby Hamilton. Pronouns are he, him, his. And I'd like to start my presentation with just a little bit about myself. I was born at Legacy Emmanuel Hospital in the mid-'80s, right here in Portland. I grew up in a mostly single guardian home, surrounded by gang activity, gang culture, hustlers, drugs, real challenges that make getting by and navigating daily life a real struggle. I attended several schools within the Portland public school system. I thought somebody had a hand up. Sorry about that. And I was lucky enough while I was in elementary school to get accepted into Self Enhancement Incorporated, or SEI. For those that know, and I even won Mr. SEI in the summer of 1996. So if you know about SEI and the programs, you know that's a big deal. To this day, I still drive through my old neighborhood, like in an area that used to be called the Villa out in Columbia. But this area holds a lot of memories that I'll never forget from my childhood. And I still remember the address to my childhood home in Peninsula Park. where one summer I kind of learned to swim, right? I can do enough to not drown. I don't know if it's necessarily swimming, but I'm good either way. Little things like that, skip around. This may seem like small things, but it's one of those moments that really reminds me where I come from, when I look back on over my lifetime. I share these memories because they're memories that many Portlanders can relate to, that reflect how Portland's historic neighborhoods have been overlooked or gentrified, not just by infrastructure, but by investment and disinvestment, both care and lack of care, and voice and lack of voice. And as we know, some areas have had more of these items than others. I'll just keep looking around to make sure that my stuff is on point too. Sorry about that. So about 3 years ago, I realized I wanted more than just a 9-to-5 job and a paycheck. When I applied to work for the city, I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking to answer a call. I wanted a career that allowed me to give back to my community and help recreate the same sense of safety, security, and belonging that shaped me growing up in Portland. In January of 2023, I became the Safe Blocks Program Coordinator. Sorry, I keep just wanting to make sure you all are seeing everything. A Safe Blocks Program Coordinator within the Office of Violence Prevention. In this role, my work focused on personal safety and community transformation. I facilitated personal safety workshops and trainings, conducted community outreach, and provided crime prevention through our involvement of design assessments, what was known as set test assessments. It was a step in the right direction, but I still felt like there was more I could contribute to Portland. The following year, January 2024, I shifted roles within the office to program manager, where my work focused on community violence interruption and violence intervention. As a program manager, I oversaw 4 street-level outreach contracts under the city's gun violence reduction strategy, which is Portland Ceasefire. This is a focused deterrent strategy with the goal of supporting the most high-risk individuals in our communities and providing them with the appropriate resources to reduce the chances of perpetration and retaliation of violence. During this time, I also helped coordinate Portland Ceasefire's intensive case management program and Healing Hurt People program, which is the city's hospital-based intervention program. Another contract that I oversaw during this time was the Trauma and Violence Impacted Families program, which is created to provide support to individuals and families with the intent of breaking intergenerational cycles that can cause and perpetrate violence in communities. And at this point is where I really felt like I was getting somewhere. I'm still currently a program manager with OVP, but now my work focuses on violence prevention. In addition to the TVA program contract that I've continued to oversee, I currently oversee the 2025 Safe Portland grant, in which the city is collaborating and partnering with 16 local organizations to reduce gun violence, through community-based prevention efforts. And my other experience in the office includes taking a substantial portion of director level duties and responsibility in a shared interim capacity for nearly a year and a half. Also still riding high, feeling good about the work that I get to do currently and the impact it's having, but I still feel like there was more I can do. Brings us here today. So with that said, and now that you know a little bit more about me, I'm going to share with you what I plan to accomplish in my first 90 days if I'm chosen as the next Office of Violence Prevention Program. Here's the agenda of the items for my presentation. And as you can see, we're going to get right into each time frame, and then I'll discuss what my plans are. This is where it gets tricky. So this is where what I'm going to say is going to be a little different than what's on the slides, right? So this is going to be the high level piece of what the work is actually going to be. And then I'm going to be kind of explaining what each of those are, with the understanding that this being high level presentation, part of the interview process, it won't get into the nitty gritty of how, who, and all of those pieces. And that's gonna come from the relationship building and the relationships to get the work done and leveraging our CBO partners. But with that said, during my first 30 days, I'll concentrate on refining, strengthening OVP's messaging, mission, and goals, starting with a comprehensive review of all current audits and analyses of the office. Next, I will oversee an internal assessment and review of the current structure, workload, responsibilities, and workload and responsibilities of our office to identify areas for improvement. Then our team will connect with stakeholders across the violence prevention ecosystem using a holistic and community-informed approach to address root causes in effort to prevent violence before it starts. During this period, I will also collaborate with the team to ideate and design high-impact, easily implementable improvements, programs, and events that can be quickly brought to life. The next 30 days, I will review and synthesize the findings from the initial 30 days to ensure the new vision aligns with the organizational goals, city core values, and community needs. Following that, we, as our team in the office, will begin implementing the improvements identified through the prior assessments of the office and its programs. Next, we will develop OVP strategic roadmap and vision to clearly outline our goals and guide our efforts to assist in creating a safer Portland for all Portlanders. And lastly, during this period, we will establish a regular cadence of feedback and coaching to provide timely guidance, track progress, and strengthen trust within the team. My remaining days of the 90, I'll focus on optimizing, leading, and scaling. During this time, I will transition to independent leadership, working independently, having completed the shadowing phase to lead initiatives and set the foundation for OVP's long-term success. I will communicate the vision and plan. Also during this time, we'll share the refined vision strategic plan with the team, key stakeholders, and communities to ensure alignment and collective commitment. During this time, also optimizing workflows, implementing process improvements and integrations that enhance operational efficiency and increase the impact of OVP's work. Continue to mentor and delegate meaningful responsibilities to team members while supporting their growth, providing coaching, and identifying long-term development opportunities. We will establish a reporting cadence, develop and implement a consistent reporting structure to track performance, monitor progress, and keep senior leadership and community partners informed. We will deliver measurable results by piloting new initiatives or projects designed to generate clear, quantifiable outcomes that demonstrate early impact. And then we will continually seek feedback and gather in-depth feedback from community members, partners, staff, higher leadership, and use this insight to refine strategies and guide next steps. So shown on the screen is a high-level recap of everything that I just said and the key success factors that will be used to monitor, measure, and review the progress of my 30, 60, 90-day plan. But let's get past this one because you all have been here for quite a while. I know there's been quite an issue you all have had to toughen it out on. So I just want to start by saying, or end by saying, thank you. I'm truly thankful for this opportunity. I appreciate everyone that's been a part of this process as I understand them now, and to all the community members here today and supporting from afar. Everyone's engagement, you all being here, the people online, It reflects just how vital this role is to the well-being of our communities and how important it is to fill this position. And then with that said, I will roll back, so you can see those closing remarks and those key success factors, as far as tracking everything, and plan. So thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go into the question and answer portion. So who would like to start with the question?
Yeah, my name is Jorge. Thank you, Bobby, for presenting. I have two questions, if that's okay. Seeing that you already are in the Office of Violence Prevention, what have you done to push the mission and values of OVP?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thank you for that. I would say it's a great question. Thank you. I would say that, I am constantly trying to be the voice of community. Over the past nearly 3 years, I have been able to work side by side with community, with CBOs, other partners, city level. And so what I do is I bring back a lot of that information. So when we're looking to consult or push things forward in the office, I'm always looking through the lens of community and what's best for the community. Also with the data collection that we've already received, right? So making sure that we're utilizing all the information that we have at hand to ensure it. And so I'm a big proponent of making sure that those voices are being heard. I'm also for myself, I do a lot of research in my own time. Constantly looking into different programs, especially at the trainings that I get to go to and that I get to attend. I love to bring stuff back home, share that information, see what's going to work for us. I'm a big proponent of getting out and being connected to the community. That's why this work matters to me. So being able to call on current partners, CBOs, community members, and lean into their expertise, I'm always trying to put that at the forefront of all of our work.
Thank you. And then I have a follow-up to that. Seeing that you're already kind of spoke on it, what would you change about OVP if you were to become the program manager as the person that would lead the program?
In what sense?
Any sense that you want. Make it a bit complicated, right?
Yeah. I would say, well, starting with the 30, 60, 90, right? I think one of the easiest changes is going to be internal, right? So we review our structure, we review how things are currently going. I think it would also be worth it to review what led to a lot of the turnover over the years of the office staff, right? And so I always feel like we start in-house first. I've got to travel a lot since I've worked for the city, and the first thing, the flight attendants say is put your mask on before helping others. And I feel like we need to get our stuff, all of our ducks in a row, figure out what our plan is. That's why one of the first things I mentioned was starting with our messaging. While the team does a lot of great work, we get a lot of things done through partnership, I feel like there's more we could be doing in-house. And so I was looking to push that piece forward.
They have something to say about outlet.
I think that's also the intent. Jump on first. Wait, so I don't know if it was getting.
You're a great one. Thanks for your presentation, Bobby. I would like to know, there's different forms of violence in the city of Portland, and one thing that the city doesn't really focus on is domestic violence. So how would you help bridge that gap between the county and the city and other bureaus work on violence, but not necessarily that, for resources for those families?
Thank you for that question as well. I think the first step is just going to be identifying those stakeholders who are doing that work already, introducing ourselves to them, or introduce myself to them in that, to go to your question. Building that relationship, seeing where we can work together and what that can really look like. I will say that for a lot of changes when it comes to adding programs, maybe even some collaboration efforts, we're looking at more funding. But so keeping that piece in mind, we can always bridge out and connect with, start those conversations. But that's always gonna be in the back of my mind as well too. But starting those conversations, seeing, what current efforts we can partner and collaborate on, and then taking it from there.
I think,
Hi, Bobby. My question is about relationship building and maintaining. Being that the biggest elephant in the room, I feel like, with gun violence prevention or prevention services is pre-existing relationships and professionalism. What would be your strategy on making sure that we are internally having those hard conversations, with our leaders about conduct and how we're conducting ourselves, and how we're sharing platforms and collaborating?
That's a great question too. I think it's gonna start with relationship building. Like, because if I go to somebody that I may not know or I haven't worked with in this capacity, maybe in one ear out the other, right? So first is building bridges, it's connecting, getting to know them, making sure that they understand our office, what our plans are, and how we plan to work with people. And it's gonna be, a lot of it will be relational, right? But when it comes down to the work, if it's contract, if it's granted, right, there's certain pieces where we have a little bit more authority. But my thing is, I always try the knife out in the sense of if we have the same goal, making sure our communities are taken care of, making sure our home is safe, then we can work through whatever problems we have. Right, and to set the standard for the work itself, whether we're looking towards institutionalizing work or to find other pieces, whatever that might be, we have to set the standard and make sure that we're working together to get all the people doing the work to that same stage. So this really comes down to just holding people accountable for the work, for what they're doing, for harm, or for the healing that they're seeking.
I'm gonna just offer an online question. So this question, violence prevention is often about proving that something didn't happen. If homicide rates in Portland stay flat for 2 years while you're working here, how do you prove to skeptics that your program should continue being funded?
That prevention work is tricky in that sense, right? Because realistically, we may never know that Johnny never joined the game, but we'll know that the success rate of kids graduating high school is gone. Right, so I think it's gonna have to be a little bit of cross-referencing of different programming or tracking requirements. The other piece of it is too, is I'll say that in my experience so far, and I've said this before in my regular work, is that we can't necessarily say that one piece of intervention, one piece of transformation, one piece of prevention work led to the success of how things are going. But if we know that if we remove one of those puzzle pieces, that things would be a lot worse, right? So I think that that is a good problem to have to tackle. And I think that that's an amazing question, and that's something that we can dive deeper into to figuring out where some metrics that we can use to track those type of items. And it's going to come down to those partnerships again. Maybe it's going to be our office better working with school districts. Is it going to be if we're going to monitor attendance of items based off of prevention programs to see if maybe school attendance is going up, if the graduation rate is going up. So. Go ahead. I think we did have her hand up.
Hi, my name is Naima. You mentioned that you had like financial stuff in the back of your mind and like funding problems or like funding is a issue that you have. What would be your way of acquiring said funding, and what would be the first thing that you would put that funding into, or what would your focus be when you acquire?
That's a great question. You guys aren't tired at all. You know, really great. I know we've had this discussion quite a bit in the office already, so I will really be looking into but like what federal opportunities are out there, like what additional dollars can our office go after, right? We get more money to CBOs and more money to communities. I would also be open to, and this is a much higher level discussion, philanthropy dollars. Donate, right? Other ways that we could bring funding in to be able to better assist our communities. And I would say for the prevention piece of things, once we were able to acquire a new set of dollars, it's got to be into the youth. Right now, largely, we see a lot of focus in like middle and up, right? Well into early adulthood, which is still youth for a lot of places. I would probably say start looking as early as elementary school.
I know you understand that different things. It comes to prevention. A lot of things is happening for prevention, and I think that it's being like overlooked in the way of how it can be impacted by people. Like if you were over OVP, when it came to funding organizations or people who work in the prevention lane, right? With like because a lot of dollars are stretched out, which makes it less of an impact. But I know it seems like more bodies. But like there's people who does prevention, that has thorough programs and the ability to go into PPS and have a part of prevention in PPS for some of these programs. Would you push that? Would you understand that we have 16 people, like you guys have 16, and I can't tell you how many we need, but I'm saying, what if you cut that to 10, right? And then it gives the ability for organizations who really work with prevention and going into situations with PPS. How would you try to stretch the dollars a little more by making more of an impact in the prevention lane? Because it's just seeing like a whole bunch of events is what's making the prevention lane. But there's people in here who has teams that want to go into there and uplift the prevention lane.
Thank you, Marvin. That's a great question too. I would say it's going to start with some of the assessment, that internal assessment, right? What does the current granting funding process look like? Right? So where can we strengthen that piece, right? And then when we're looking at how dollars are going out the door, what that looks like is realistically is we have to find a way to collect in-depth data where the need is. So we understand that right now, just from shooting reviews and things like that, where the violence is occurring, but how do we best get connected to the people? Right, we know it's the youth. Right? So actually, school-based is all online and all of my things too. Not here, but works. But from branching further into school-based opportunities, things like faith-based, I know a lot of that's got a lot of stigma surrounding it, but there's opportunity for everybody to come to the table. Right? So I hear you, there's currently a couple of grantees within the schools, but when it comes to getting the dollars out the door, that's something internally that's already been in discussion on what that can look like, how can we better improve that from language coming down from the federal government to the state government, also at the city level. So I know that our team is very open to figuring out what's going to best meet the needs of the communities. And so first and foremost, that's going to be a real issue. So if we're looking at trends, if we're looking at data, if we're looking at the evidence, and it shows these items, we'll work towards figuring out how to make those items work.
Can you clarify for me real quick? You mentioned TBIF and Healing Hurt People. What was your role with that? But 2 things.
Okay. So with Healing Hurt People, I just assisted on it. So let's say if ceasefire, Portland ceasefire style out. I recovered, right? I have my own relationship with the Human team. With TDIF, I did oversee that contract, so I worked closely with POIC and their team for the TDIF.
And for those of you in the room who don't know, Healing for People actually started many years ago. It was actually two people. One of them was a licensed psychiatrist. She would actually go into community and provide therapy in community without anybody ever laying on the couch. And TDIF is a spin-off of that, or an extension of, meant to meet people right where they're at. Bobby, my question for you is, you came into the city around 2023. I would like to know, what is your experience that you believe most sets you up to lead this office in the direction that it needs to go? And how will you improve response time to families who are in crisis?
Ms. Dixon, great questions, and I may have to ask you to repeat part of that too. So starting with the response time. I think what boils down to that is, so with the current grants and contracts that I've overseen, I'm pretty tired with the people doing that. Weekly check-ins, just to touch base, and then monthly set. We're going through all the data, we're looking over everything. So
Let me just clarify for a second, Bobby. I'm asking you because there's community that are calling the OEP line, they're calling your office, and a former director is still on the voicemail. They're not getting responded to either, and there were other community members, paid and unpaid, are getting those calls.
Gotcha. No, and that is that's a great piece to point out, right? And that, again, with the evaluation of the office, right, and trying to bring things, the standard up, right, that's definitely a piece of it. And with that said, too, is, with that, go ahead. The question is on response.
That was the last part.
Yes, that's all my birthday, that's a part of the number right now. It's going to be continuing to build those relationships, having direct communication with the teams, right? And then making sure that, you know, if it's not going as well as it should, then having conversations of where can we improve, how can we do that, right? And then me working with them to be able to best assist in getting those responses. So that's one piece of it. It's just really boots on the ground, connecting teams, connecting also with, there's been times where I've talked directly to folks myself, just so they kind of understood the process. If they had any questions, they could reach out to me too. So I'm available for that, even in this next role. Then the other piece of the question.
In the city since about 2023, how do you feel you were best set up to lead this office?
Yeah. I know that sounds like a very short amount of time. I feel like I've done a ton in a short amount of time. My prior work, I did also, I've got 5 years experience of running at different levels of nonprofit work. When it comes down to the entry second chance program, workforce development. Prior to that, I also have 12 years of experience on security work, so I understand some of the law enforcement piece too. So I think that all of my adult work has been kind of a culmination in prepared for this role. In the sense of I keep my ties to community. I love being on the front lines. And so the work means a lot to me, and so I'll do what I can to stay engaged, keep in touch with community, to best hear their voice and what they have going on. And then also utilizing and leveraging any of my professional relationships, personal relationships too, and my education piece to ensure that we're meeting the folks who are there.
Yeah, sorry, I think I've got to give us a time check here because we've got literally time for, I think, maybe one more question.
I think she had a question up front that she was going to be next.
Well, you don't have to answer it. Someone else can do a question, but I would say making a difference, making the difference, making a difference is grassroots work, making the difference is political work. So when you do get into office, always consider collaborating with our state representatives and not just showing up when a bill is trying to be published. Because there needs to be an open, consistent communication line between the state and the county and what's being done prevention wise.
Definitely agree, and even with current city council, right, relationships can be improved upon as well.
And this might be a tough, but it's a very brief question. How do you plan to be an influential leader alongside the Stephanie Howards, because that's, you know, essentially gonna be your boss. And if you do work with Multnomah County and those state leaders, how are you not going to lose your leadership in the Office of Violence Prevention role if chosen and still work alongside them? Because that means that you can't make everybody happy. What is that gonna look like?
Great question. Last question. So wanting to take on this role, my goal is not to make everybody happy because I know that's not gonna happen. I want to do what's right for our community. So whatever area that puts me in, I'm happy to be in, right? Because my goal is always going to be putting the community first and putting our people first. I would love to have it be anything and be able to just have conversations with people, but I understand there's a hierarchy of things, right? There's a chain of command and things like that. I'm willing to work within that. So I'm willing to do what it's going to take for us to be able to make sure our communities are thriving, all of our communities for all court members. And so, you know, I just can't make everybody happy.
I think, thank you, Bobby, for your presentation. We really appreciate it. Next up, we have the survey here. We really want your feedback. And while we're having folks do that, I just want to say thank you for showing up tonight. So many of you show up all the time, and we feel that, and we hear you, we see you, and we really, really appreciate that. Your feedback tonight on these survey questions, I'm going to be collecting that and taking that to the Deputy City Administrator, and these candidates are meeting with him tomorrow. And so all of that feedback is really important to him, certainly important to me, and to our hiring committee to make sure that we're making decisions with your views in mind. So with that, I think I'm going to ask, we've got members from our hiring committee. I'm going to ask if folks could maybe take a quick 10-minute huddle with me in another room while folks finish up the survey. And then we will just say thank you again to everybody for coming.
And we can start.
Thank you.